ourselves in the mess, looking for foreign investment, and find ourselves in issues like we have for range nowadays. Now, I want to make it clear. I'm not against foreign investment. Never. I can never be against foreign investment. When I was Minister of Tourism, we got the most hotels ever. We had 6 hotels during that period under my watch. So I'm not against foreign investment. What I'm saying, you can't have a country that's purely dependent on foreign investment and you have the human capital just looking to earn wages. The human capital, and that's why you want to have one university graduate per household, that human capital can go out and think for themselves and devise policies so that they can create their own employment to supplement the foreign investment.
Would you like to comment on what's happening at the South Louis Community College?
Well, as I said earlier, I think the government messed up. Either the Ministry of Education messed up or the government as a whole messed up, because it is impossible for a board to go in public and announce an increase in fares. And that wasn't done just lightly, It was done in public. Everybody knew. I mean, it was on the college website. It was in the newspapers. A letter was sent out to students. That could not happen without the government knowing. That's impossible. And I think the board did the right thing in that if the board messed up so badly, according to the government, the board did the right thing and resigned. But there are different issues at that school, at the college. There was the issue of the principal. The principal. Why did the government send the principal away? That lady was one of the most, was a qualified lady. We recruited her from the Bahamas. She wasn't recruited by the Labour Party. She was recruited because of her skills. They sent her away. There are issues there. There are many issues there. So the issues are not only with the fees. The issues are, what's the government doing with the school? What is the vision? Where is going to be a college of the West Indies, of the University of the West Indies? Where is going to be a separate university? Where is the vision? And again, that is the problem. The government is such a haste to ensure that yellow reigns. So because the principal was appointed by the SLP, you must get rid of her because she's yellow. Because they didn't even, there's nobody, and correct me if I'm wrong, in that board, that was in the past board. So where is the institutional memory? How do you know what's happening? Where is the institution? Many people on that board were not Labour Party people. They were there because of their expertise. I can give you their names. They're not party people, but you get in the government and you send all of them at home just because you assume they were Labour. So you have no institutional memory, you have nothing. So you end up in the mess that you are.
You said that they sent them home?
Well, they did not.
Because
they
the
did not
information that
renew.
we have is that they resigned.
No, I'm talking about the board that was in place when they came into office.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. There's not one person there with a memory, the institutional memory. And you send the principal home also. He said, I'll tell you what, many of these problems in St. Lucia that this government is facing because of their petty political ways. Petty politics, the politics of revenge, and the politics of vindictiveness that has caused many things to happen. Many, many things. There are a series of things. And if you look at any spot that the government finds itself in, it's because of that pettiness. And you can, from the beginning, range. Any project, range. Just look, just call it. And you'll see in the back of it, it's a yellow versus red situation.
Mm-hmm. Let's go over now to the NIC situation, the $100 million loan from the NIC to the government. What is your party's issue with that?
First of all, it's very callous of any government to believe that if you are borrowing $100 million from the NIC, that the people should not be concerned. I mean, it's arrogance and it's callousness.
When you say the people, who are you referring to?
We and the people generally, the people of St. Lucia, including, because you see, Andre, the business of
but the government has said that this is nothing unusual. That your administration, when you were in office, you did the same thing.
And we never quarreled if anybody complained. We never said they should not complain. We never said they should not ask questions. Listen to me. If you notice, when we came out the first time, we asked questions, I mean, you must keep the historical thing in mind. You must have the history correctly. We asked questions. We asked the government whether these things were true. Now, $100 million of national insurance money. National insurance is what is called social security. And for people who are listening in other parts of the world, you know what social security is. It's a very vexing issue. It's a very sensitive issue. Now, if the government, if news, a transparent government could have come openly in Parliament and say, we have difficulties in paying the bonds, so we are going to the NIS for assistance, and then we hopefully will pay them at a particular time. The Parliament would debate it, and the public would have known. But it's the secrecy. Now, in the secrecy, and you are annoyed because people are asking questions. I mean, this is crazy. It's arrogance at its highest. The government is a custodian of the money of the people. It's not my money. It's not the government's money. And when $100 million of these dollars are being used, we have to ask a question. So, here's what happened. First of all, the bonds are normally rolled over. If the bonds were not rolled over, that's a signal.
By the way, can you explain what that means?
A rollover means that I've tried to do that. I did that sometime. Let's see if we can do it again. You put your money in the bank. You have $10,000 in the bank on a fixed deposit. At the end of the year, you get an interest of 5%. You say to the bank, you keep my $10,000, but give me my interest. The $10,000, you've rolled it over. So normally, the bonds are rolled over, okay? So what happens is that this time, the person who had the bond say they're not rolling them over. That could be for a number of reasons. I mean, a number of reasons. I agree, it could be a number of reasons. But the fact is, that's normally a sign. Now, when the government would have noticed that the bonds cannot be rolled over, and they do not have the money to pay the bond, that is also a sign. Because that's a government that speaks about a sinking fund. That's a government that says, listen, we've put money aside for this, and that is why you put money aside for these things, to pay your sinking fund, etc. Now, when a government defaults on a bond, that means when the bondholder says, I want my bond, my money back at the time you promised to give it to me, and you cannot give it to me, it's called a default. And that's a signal. That happened in Jamaica, it happened in St. Kitts, and that's a signal where you have to go to the IMF. When you default on bond payments, you're saying to the world and to investors that your credit worthiness is questionable. So what do? The government did not have the money to pay the bondholders. That's a fact. They should admit it. So to avoid that problem, they went to the NIC for financing. Now, the NIC, you must recall, is a custodian of money for pensioners. At some point in time, people will be drawing from the NIC and they will not be contributing themselves. So it's savings for future gain. And the younger generation will be putting in the NIC for the older generation to get it at some point. Now, so you must be concerned. Question is, will you be able to pay back the $100 million? The government was assuming, and I'm very happy if it happens, that they will be able to sell more bonds, in that other bondholders would have bought bonds that would give them the money to pay NIC. So that means it will just be an exchange of money. So there'll be no money, there'll be no extra money in the system. Because you've borrowed $100 million at NIC, you've sold the bonds, and you're going to now repay NIC with $100 million that you've got from the new bond owners. That's all it is. That means there's no extra money in the system. So the government's fiscal plan, or their capital plan, or their plan for expenditure is going to be affected because they don't have that $100 million that they presume they would have. Now, so we are saying, listen, first of all, what certainty do you have that you'll get the $100 million to pay the NIC? All the government had to say is, we hope that the bonds are sold and we will pay the NIC. We pledge to pay the NIC. Secondly, we're saying, why are you going to the market to give people 7.25%, and you heard the minister boast about it, and he put it against confidence, but you're giving the NIC 1%. or if you want 3%, because the minister said that if the letter that said 3% was a wrong letter that was leaked. Right? So you're saying that why the great spread? If you're paying other people 7%, why are you paying pensioners 1%? That's the other question we ask. The third question we ask is, why do you think these bondholders are not rolling over their bonds? Why do you think so? The answer to that question is, we think that the people want their money for investment, or they believe they want their money now. They no longer want to keep it in that portfolio. So what we would say, okay, let's wait and see. But the only reason why you couldn't write a check for the $100 million and pay the bondholders, because you have problems. You don't have the money. But he glibly says a cash flow problem, as if a cash flow problem means is a big word for saying you don't have money. You don't have the money. That's all a cash flow problem means. He says the cash flow issue. You don't have the money. Why you don't have the money? Because you have fiscal problems. And that's the problem. You don't have the money because you have fiscal issues.
But the minister made it clear that these monies are going to be repaid, at least by the 26th, I think he said, of this month.
Because he's hoping that he would have sold the bonds. And to make it worse.
You said hoping?
He was hoping at the time. Mm-hmm. He's not a guardian. He's got no control over that. He was hoping. And listen to me. We asked another set of questions last week. We asked, who are the people who bought these bonds? They haven't answered. He makes a fuss about in confidence in the economy. Ask yourself, he must answer, who are the people who bought these bonds? And the answer is going to be very interesting.
Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, there was some talk that it's the government who actually purchased those bonds.
There is some talk that the government purchased some of it, and there's some talk that the NIC, they either bought some more or they rolled over some of what they had.
But that's speculation for now.
Well, let's put it this way. I will allow the minister to come and speak the truth, because he has he always boasts he has the information. Come and see answer the question, whether NIC rolled over any of the old debt, or whether NIC bought new bonds, or whether the government bought their own bonds. He's got to answer that question. I asked the question.
So when it comes to this issue of the loan from the NIC, your party does not really have a problem with it. Where you have the problem is that it's saying the way it was done?
No. Our problem is, do not pretend as if that's normal. Do not try to say we are creating panic in the do not try to say that. Do not try to say we've been and the kind of words he used. Don't say that. Say the opposition has a concern. It's a right concern. Andre, $100 million from the NIC without knowing, with speculation on how you'll pay it back, must be a concern. It must be a concern. So we say, answer the question. Listen to me. That is a fact. First of all, they've castigated the messenger. Talk about leaks. There is something called the freedom of information. There is nothing secret in government financing, Andre. The Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago, it meets every week. Do you know the Commissioner of Police? There was a new Commissioner of Police appointed in Trinidad, and there was a vote in the Parliament. He had to get a majority vote in the Parliament, the Commissioner of Police. This government behaves as if government is secret. Our Parliament meets when the government wants. You understand? If these things come out in the Parliament, then people will discuss them, and the public will have both sides. But once these things come out, first of all, the government blames the person who discloses the information. They go, it will leaking, confidentiality. What confidentiality is there with the people's money? There can't be no confidentiality. Confidentiality is about your home and your inside. Well, the people's money can't be anything confidential about the people's money, and these are the problems. These are the problems that we have. So we are saying that the government, as usual, tried to hide and cover up on this NIC business, and it's our duty. We make no apologies for telling the public the exact situation and allowing the government to remedy it or explain.
Mr. Pierre, is the government obligated, maybe under law, convention, whatever, to come to Parliament with those things?
The government, and that is where some people talk about constitutional change. I'll tell you something, Andrew. You know the government can run with only two ministers. The Minister of Finance and the Attorney General.
Why do you say that?
That's what the Constitution says. There is no need for any ministers, you know. There was some prime minister, I think the Prime Minister of Antigua. He ran a government for a year. He and his Attorney General, you know. Even look at the Constitution. The Constitution speaks, it names three positions in the Parliament: the Attorney General, the Prime Minister, and the Leader of the Opposition. All the rest, they say there shall be ministries, there shall be ministers, shall be parliamentary secretaries. It never says there shall be Minister of Education. It doesn't say so. You understand? Now, you have a dichotomy sometimes when there is no leader of the opposition, as is in Grenada and Barbados. So you have a problem. You understand? But Barbados changed it by the guy crossing the floor. So the point I'm making to you is that whereas the Constitution was not made for unreasonable men, it was worked out for reasonable men and for honorable men. And it assumes that honorable men will do honorable things. Now, if you have a situation where you're dealing with the people's money, many of these things, Andre, that got exposed, and if they were in the public domain, there would be no need for that, you know. If parliamentarians would come to Parliament and discuss it, but you have a government where there is no legislative branch as such. The executive is the same as the legislature, because all of them, including those who were selected, are in cabinet. You understand? That is the problem. That's part of the problem. And the government doesn't come to Parliament. So we, the people, are kept in the dark.
So you're saying that you mentioned about honorable men and so on doing honorable things, right? You're saying that this administration, they're not being honorable.
When you're in government, we get to Parliament once a month. Hopefully, we wanted to come more times, once a month. When this government comes to Parliament 4 times a year. 4 times a year. It's government by cabinet. And the cabinet is the same as the legislature, because all of them are in the cabinet.
But technically, are they doing something that is wrong then by not coming?
Legally, they're not. But morally, they are doing something wrong. But legally, they're not.
Okay, let's move on, because you spoke about secrecy and so on. Let's move on to the OKEU. And your party, again, giving the impression that there are plans to privatize that institution.
Okay. Again, we come back to the issues, the main issues. OKEU. Up to yesterday, the Prime Minister made the point that he wants to open OKU in December. The Prime Minister has never admitted that Dr. Stephen King was appointed to be the commissioning czar. He's never admitted that Dr. Stephen King had begun to champion a process that would have moved the Victoria Hospital to AKU. He's never admitted that. And he's never said why he stopped that. Never. Never. Now, I'll put it to you. The only reason why it stopped, because of petty politics. There's a document not prepared. You see, Andrea, these documents are not prepared by politicians, you know. They're prepared by staff of the Ministry of Health. They were prepared by staff of the EU. They were prepared by consultants, not by politicians, not by Alvina Reynolds or Kenny Anthony or Philip J. Pierre. It was prepared by technical people, people who are trained in health issues, by a lady called Dr. Zeister Edmonds. These are the people who were involved in that, you know, not me. I only saw it when it came to cabinet. There is a document about the recommissioning of OKU. The Prime Minister's never answered, where is that document? Why wasn't that document implemented? He speaks about money. That document had a process by which the money would have been found to transfer to the OKU. look at the situation with the dialysis machines when the people died, when the man who died. And again, my sincere condolences to that family. The alarm bells were rung that it may not be the right thing to do to move the dialysis machine without the commensurate emergency services. I'm not a doctor. I can't say whether it's right or wrong. Neither is the Prime Minister. You have to work on the best advice. What this government does, they attack civil servants. They attack the messenger. And civil servants, I want to send a message out to them this morning. Always remain professional. Do not allow politicians do not become the PRO for politicians. Do not force politicians to tell you to say what is not right. You understand? Do not, if you do not want to say it's not right, say nothing. But do not allow politicians to make you say what's wrong, or to sing to the politicians' supper. The technical people, they are the ones who make these decisions on health. What the government does, they attack the Medical Dental Association. They attack the doctors. The last thing the minister said is that the people in the health and safety thing, they have the different rules for different people. They attack the messenger.
So what is your party's take on this whole issue of the privatization of the OKEU? What is the
Our take is we are against privatization.
Mm-hmm. Why?
We are against it. We are against it because the literature has said and the experts have said that privatization does not serve the needs of all the people.
But the question is, Mr. Leader of the Opposition, can we afford
that is the
to
question.
Operate that?
Okay.
Yeah.
And that is why there were different areas of health financing. We started the universal health care, the different areas. You know, it's not something that you can sit and you can see definitively X or Y. You have to plan it. You have to look at the different scenarios. And that was what we were doing. The different scenarios. And that is why we started universal health care. It had to be at different levels, whether it would be a basket of services, we started the discussion. But when you put a hospital in the private hands, Andre, private hands means profit. That's all it means, you know. There is nothing to be shy about. Private hands means profit. Mm-hmm. And profit means your expenses must be less than your revenue. And once you're in private hands, that's why it don't matter if it's hospitals, don't matter if it's prisons, once it's in private hands, that's where it is. And we're saying that it's not the best thing to do, particularly when it's been done in the dark. It's been done in the dark, you know.
And when you say in the dark again, not coming to Parliament with it?
Not coming to Parliament, not discussing. Remember Dr. Kenny Anthony, when he was Prime Minister, he asked the opposition to join in a task force to speak about health. They did not cooperate at the time. Up to now, they did not cooperate, you know. You know what the Prime Minister said? We've lost our right to speak on St. Jude because we lost the election. I mean, you see, you can say that. You understand? So, in all the privatization of the hospital, we're saying, but that's the same government. That's the same government that refused to have a public-private partnership with the airports. That's the same government, you know, that said they want to run their own airports. So you want to run your own airport that deals with physical things, but you don't want you want the private people to run your hospital.
Okay, now let's talk about the sandals tax issue. All right. My guest earlier this week was Dr. Eubolus Raymond, Minister of Responsibility for Finance, and he spoke about the fact that what was done by forgiving sandals that debt, it was done in the best interest of St. Lucia. He also mentioned that during your administration that you did the same thing. And here you are criticizing the current administration for forgiving sandals that debt. What is your take on that one?
First of all, that's not true.
What is not true?
We did the same thing. I don't know what the same thing meant. That's
well, he
true.
spoke about, I think, Smuggler's Cove.
And I'm going to come to that quickly. You see, let me make it clear. Let me make it abundantly clear. Let me make it lucidly clear. The Labour Party has nothing against Sanders. The Labour Party is not in the business to injure Sanders. Sanders is one of the largest corporate citizens. Sanders employs the people of the country. Sanders markets St. Lucia. Sanders is a big player. It would be silly of us to believe that we want to confront Sanders. But Sanders must obey the law. There is no man or no company that's above the law. Good. That's the first thing I want to make it. So I'll make it abundantly clear. Because, the propagandists and the rumor mongers and the Cambridge Analytica people will see the Labour Party is against Sanders. No, we're not against Sanders. I want to make it abundantly clear. We think Sanders did some things that were not in our best interest of our party, but we believe Sanders took corporate decisions and we respect it. We respect the tenacity of Butch Stewart and his management team. We respect it and we have no issues with it. First thing. Secondly, the issue of the $24 million must be taken in two parts. I want to tell you further that this government has given Sanders generous incentives. We've given them very generous incentives. So we're not in a matter of incentives. We're in a matter of principle and the rule of law. Now, that issue is a withholding tax issue. That means that the tax is not paid by the company, it's paid by the person who is getting the money. You agree? Mm-hmm. Good. We're saying that issue should have been dealt with by the tax authorities. Inner Revenue, Commissioner of Taxes, tax commissioners, etc. We're also saying that the government had already waived fines and taxes. They already waived it. So really, the amount Sanders really had to pay, should have paid, was less. So we're saying the government should allow the process to continue and allow that, since it was already in the hands of the civil servants, allow the civil servants to opine and let the civil servants and let the technical people give the answers to the question.
But again, Mr. Lead, of your position, did they do something that was illegal?
You see, Andre, let me give you an example. Let me give you a very raw example. Supposing you have a stepdaughter. That's a very raw example. And your stepdaughter is 20 years old. I think there was some artist who did that. And then you get involved with your stepdaughter. You have nothing illegal, You are moral. You are amoral. You have nothing illegal. So the idea of illegality is not always the case in government. And that's why we are where we are, Arrest him. Or if you say the man steal money, arrest him. These are the excuses. Take him to court. Yeah. And that's the excuses we use for these kind of things, Oh, you have nothing against the man because you arrest him yet. There is perception. And when you're in politics, perception is important. The perception is all in that case. Mm-hmm. And we're saying that at a time when you're complaining about not having money, you must be more careful in giving people the money out. That's all we're saying.
Mm-hmm. So did your party or administration follow the same rule then when it comes to
exactly? That is why it hadn't been done. Mm-hmm. Because it was going for the system. Exactly why.
Okay.
That is why that never happened on us. Mm-hmm. Because we are going for the system. Following the rule of law, allowing the system, allowing the civil servants. You see, there are certain things, Angie, politicians should not get involved in it. Allow the system to work. And I'm a firm believer in the belief in the judiciary. The judiciary should be swift and should be free so that people can get recourse. You cannot put the final say in the hands of politicians. The final say must be within the certain context within the law.
And you say in the case of Sandals, that didn't happen?
No, because
under this administration.
Because it did not allow the system to go through its normal.
Mm. Okay. Dr. Raymond also spoke about the poor state of the economy during your administration.
Okay. I'm glad you brought that up. Economists don't say poor state. Economies are described in two terms. They're described in real terms, okay, or they described in what is called feel good value in value. Because you see, I'll tell you something. In a country, some people can tell you things are doing very well. In India, you'll be told India is doing very well, but India has the biggest poverty, has the largest poverty. So economies are not measured in terms of words. They measure in terms of figures, right? Or in feeling, how you feel. But figures are the most important thing. Now, when an economist speaks, he doesn't tell you about poor state. He tells you about fiscal position. He tells you about ratios. He tells you about surpluses. He tells you about deficits. Now, the government had... Wallace Raymond gives the impression that when the government came into power, the economy was in a complete state of disrepair, and in his 1 year of magic, he's turned it over. That's far from the truth. Wallace Raymond and the government commissioned a study called Fiscal and Structural Reforms in St. Lucia towards a comprehensive agenda in November 2016. I want to read the first line in that. Notwithstanding the improvement in fiscal performance in the past 4 years, 4 years from November 2016, notwithstanding the improvement in fiscal performance in the last 4 years. And again, as economists do, they said, see Appendix 1. So it tells you what they're speaking about, the figures. And it says, public finances remain on an unsustainable path. And it says, see baseline scenario in Table 2. So what their own study said is that the fiscal performance in the country was improving. Their own study. Now, you measure fiscal performance in terms of balances, primary surpluses, recurrent deficits, debt to GDP ratio. This is how you measure the strength of an economy. You also measure an economy. You also measure an economy in terms of the macroeconomic situation, whether there's investment. But the important thing is whether the investment multiplier creates any change in the micro situation. So you can have macroeconomic growth and not development based on consumption, but there's nothing happening to the fiscal. So you find you may have big hotels going up, but the government can't fund its hospital. Because what's happening there is the big hotel, the investment multiplier is low, so it doesn't filter into the government's finances. When we came into government in 2011, we never said to the country that things were nice and dandy. We said things were not nice and dandy, and we were taking steps to improve it. That is why Kenny Anthony has been castigated for saying that he was never in favor of VAT, and that's been used against him. But he also said, we as a government said, we have to implement VAT to improve the fiscal situation in the country. Because when we came into government, the government was spending more than it was receiving by over 9% in terms of its recurrent expenditure and its recurrent expenses. So, what did we do? We implemented VAT. Now, in the government's own documents, they are saying to you, the tax system has over time shifted from reliance on an income-based system to a one that is consumption-based. The introduction of VAT in 2012 marked a significant milestone in the government of St. Lucia's efforts to improve administration and sufficiency. VAT was levied at 15% with a threshold of $400,000 and replaced several taxes such as consumption tax, hotel accommodation tax, cellular tax, and environmental levy. VAT accounts for approximately 50% of indirect tax collections and 37.1% of total tax revenue. That's how economists speak. This notwithstanding, its performance has been undermined by a plethora of exemptions and zero rating of goods. These are their own experts telling us that we zero rated too many goods, right? Now, that we zero rated too many goods, right? Now, it also is saying that preliminary Preliminary indications are that VAT revenue forgone on goods and services in 2014 was around 117.4 million. So what they're telling you is that what the experts are saying is that there was 117 more million dollars to collect. That because of what we zeroed, because we implemented a humane VAT, a VAT of humanity, food stuff wasn't VATed, except the amounts are approximately 1/4 of the total potential VAT revenue and 3.1% of GDP. What they're saying is that there's another $117 million we could have collected from there. It's estimated that revenue forgone from zero ratings and exemptions on goods alone are 44.5 million or 1.2% of GDP. And you see, and Andre, that is the language that economists speak of. So we didn't just say that. So we had to implement VAT so that the fiscal situation would improve. What happened with that? A situation where Greece is the perfect example of an economy that can have macro growth, but the micro fundamentals are wrong. Because if you went to Greece, people were on holiday, people were taking people were on holiday, etc. Right? Now, what happens now is that Greece had themselves in a serious fiscal bind. So you know the story of Greece, the rest is history. We averted that in St. Lucia by implementing VAT and reducing that deficit. Now the thing is that Eubolus Raymond never calls figures. He never talks about the fiscal situation. He never says what was the deficit when they go into government and what it was when we go into government. And that's how you measure economies. Further, we never said that things were rosy. The Prime Minister at the time, he made some serious suggestions to improve the situation, which this government, when they're in opposition, they castigated. You remember the civil servants and Mary Isaac and Wilfred Pierre, what they did. You understand? You remember all that. But we were honest to the people, and we said to people, what is the situation? So the only reason why this government can pretend that they are the ones who are doing things is because of the fiscal situation that they inherited when they came into government. And that is verifiable by facts, not by he say, I say, she say, or favorite thing they like to use back and forth, which I find is such a sorry state, back and forth. There's no back and forth. They are facts, they're truth, and they are untruths. The truth is, when they came into power, the fiscal situation of the country was much better than when they got out of power. Now, what is causing the growth, or the so-called growth? I'm going to put it to you, Andrew, because of two things. Royalton Hotel and the new hotel on the Pope site, mainly the Royalton Hotel. And I'm going to prove one day with figures that the increase of tourism, the increased numbers in tourism in St. Lucia are due to two main factors. One, the increase in beds. We must do a study as to what number of beds were available in the year 2015 or even 2016, or how many beds are available in 2017, and look at the comparison, and you'll see what is the cause for the increase of tourism numbers. It's for one reason only. Royalton Hotel, that have their own aircraft, they bring their own people. I think there are 500 rooms in there, and the increase in occupancy in the big hotels like Sanders, etc. Not because of any government tourism policy, nothing. And you can do the maths. And only we're going to do the maths. We're going to create an equation between the increase in beds, the increase in bed stock, and the increase in tourism numbers. And we also, in terms of stayover visitors, and we're also going to prove that in the 5 years of the United Workers' Party rule, between 2001, between 2006 and 2011, there was not one new hotel built. And we're going to show that in our time, 2016, these two main properties came into being, and we saved the hotel, the Wyndham Hotel. We saved it, and we saved that hotel, and then because of these things, they can experience these increasing numbers because of the availability of more room stock, and that room stock came under us. Also, the Capella Hotel that we negotiated. So the point is, all the boasts, and up to now, I don't want to be people to say I'm a prophet of doom. You know what they always say? There's not been one new hotel room built yet for the last 2 years. There are plans. There are big plans, but there's not been one new hotel. The only new hotel construction that has begun is the Sanders Hotel on Pigeon Point. That has begun.
Now, Mr. Pierre, honestly, we're almost out of time already. Can you come back here on Tuesday? Is that possible? Because we need to have you back here to take some calls and so on. Is that possible, or you want
to? Tuesday may be possible.
Okay,
but I will call you on Monday and tell you.
Yes, because we don't have the time right now to take the calls.
Yeah.
But before we end, I need to ask you something very important. When Mr. Dr. Raymond was here, he mentioned the way he was treated by your party when he was a member of your party. He spoke about disrespect and so on. I don't know if you heard when he made those comments. Would you like to respond to that?
I don't know. I do not know about disrespect. All I know is Eubolus Raymond lost his seat. He was not the only one who lost his seat, but he was made the parliamentary secretary. He was not the one, and other people lost, but he was made the parliamentary secretary. He was given a responsibility in the Ministry of Trade and Commerce. I don't know what he means by disrespect. I know it is part of the chairman's, the cabinet, the chairman of cabinet, part of his rules and regulations. Parliamentary secretaries do not come to cabinet. But when the minister was not there, the parliamentary secretary comes to cabinet. I know that Eubolus was given certain tasks to perform in the Ministry of Commerce. I know that also. I do not know what's even of disrespect. I do not know what he's talking about. He should give some details of disrespect. But I also heard him say he was a card-bearing member of the United Workers' Party all the time. So so that means he was in our party and he was a card-bearing member. And you asked him, what's a card-bearing member?
I did ask him.
A card-bearing member. And he said so. Am I wrong?
Yes, he did say it.
He did say he was a card-bearing. So that means he was in our party and he was a card-bearing member of the United Workers' Party. Now, that is rules for instant expulsion, because our party says that you cannot be a member of another party and member of our party at the same time. You must leave that party completely. He also said so. So I really don't know what he means by this. You see, I'll tell you what. There is such bitterness in these people who leave our party. It's very, very funny. I mean, you are democracy. You took your own free will. You moved. I mean, no one worries about Raymond. I mean, we never called Raymond a bush doctor. We never called him that. So the point.
Why are you saying that?
But he was never called a bush doctor. Did we ever call him a bush doctor? But he ran elections for us, you know. Mm-hmm. You ran? But Eubolus Raymond says the most nasty things about us on his platform. Not that I care, but I mean, he says the worst thing. So I do not know why Eubolus is his whole. The opposition. I mean, Eubolus Raymond was in one report speaking about testicular fortitude. He used the word. You think Eubolus can speak about that? So I don't want to talk. I want Eubolus to talk about facts, talk about the figures, talk about the economy, talk about the GDP, talk about the deficits, talk about the fiscal situation, talk about why he inherited a surplus on current account of 3.4% and is right up to 7%. I want him to discuss why he got even with a rebased And look at how lucky this government is. They've gotten a rebased GDP. That means the basis in which GDP is calculated has been changed. So the debt to GDP ratio has actually decreased under them. And this is an advantage. The volume is the same, but the ratio, the percentage has decreased. He got that to deal with. And they're very busy growing it. I'd like you, Wallace Raymond, to tell me, why is the government going against all advice and borrowing $175 million to build an airport, when all advice says that you have to take yourself out of these debts? And these are things I want to discuss.
Mm-hmm. And talking about discussing that, let's just finally the issue of our current debt. You mentioned St. Lucia is in debt to the tune of about $3 billion.
Yes.
And obviously,
did he say that's not true?
He said it is true, because I did ask.
He said it's true?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Okay, good. I'm glad. Now, why? Now, the only reason why he can handle that, here's why he can handle it. In 2018, the debt was $3.1 billion. That's 63%. And the only reason why it was that, Andre, and that's very important, is not because of the way the government managed the economy. It's because of the rebase, the way it was calculated. But the volume is the same. In 2019, they are going to incur $0.3 billion worth of debt. And they add into that a debt of $4 billion. So they didn't put the $3 million in their estimates. They add into that a debt of $4 billion. That brings it up to $3.8 billion. That's going to be debt. And then, what's happened to the bond market? That doesn't mean, I hope the $3 billion that they said they'd borrow previously, the bonds are in that. I'm not sure, because you never know how it goes with the government finances. I'm not sure. So the debt of $3.8 billion is inching higher. But the question is, why is the government incurring that airport debt? Second question, if the government says the airport is starting in August, why has there not been one invitation for procurement for any of the airport services? Why haven't we got a procurement notice for the contractor? Why haven't we got a procurement notice for the person who will give the steel shed? Why? Why must the government purport to want to borrow 150 or 175 million US dollars, and up to this day we do not know how that money is going to be spent? And you say the airport is starting in August? Today is the 8th of August. So how will you start it? The 9th. So how you start it? So you start again direct awards? Direct awards? So one day you just hire a company. Now when that happens, don't you want them to be speculation? So you want the opposition to just sit back and say, okay, we have faith and trust in the government. We believe in the government. The government says that that's going to happen. So let's wait and see. We can't do that. We'll be failing in our responsibility to the country if we allow that to happen. It's just like the housing situation that they're talking about. They say the housing is going to go out public-private partnership. Have you seen any tender? Have you seen any document that would be opened by the tenders board to say how these houses are going to be built? We can't just take the government's word for it, Andre. We can't. And this Labour Party doesn't want to inherit a failed state, I want to inherit a country that I can grow. We don't want to inherit. So why would we want the country to collapse or the country to fail? We don't want that to happen. We want the country to be in a state where we can make improvements on what is there. But when you have a government the government behaves as if St. Lucia is a kingdom and we are the subjects. Just take their word for it. We can't do that. We can't take their word for it. We can't, and we will not.
Well, Mr. Pierre, honestly, we're out of time. I'm really hoping that if you can make it on Tuesday, that we can get into our calls as early as possible. Right? So, as you said, you will let me know.
I'll call you on Monday.
By Monday, because I didn't want to give our listeners 8 minutes of calling time. All right. So if we can organize that for next week and that you can be back here, that would be much appreciated.
And thank you very much, and thank you very much to your listeners. I just want to make one final plea. Our job is not to cause St. Lucia to fail. I want to make it clear. We are patriotic St. Lucians that want St. Lucia to develop and to grow for ourselves and for our children. But we cannot allow things to happen and St. Lucia to be run as if it's a kingdom. It's not a kingdom. It's a democracy, and we have a right to ask questions. We have a right to get answers to these questions.
Thank you very much, Leader of the Opposition, Honorable Philip J. Pierre. Thank you.
Access in Gas Trees is doing it again. 50% off all items at Lady Access in Gas Trees. That's right, half off all women's items. Just in time for Carnival 2018. It's Access on the corner of Mikun and Chisel.